most people who get burned by suppliers in China have sourced their factory on Alibaba. Part of the built-in nature of sourcing a factory on Alibaba is they have an English speaker and they have a marketing division, because their marketing division is posting the Alibaba listing and communicating with people via English. And that means they also have the capabilities to set up an Amazon page just as easily as they can set up an Alibaba page. Okay, so I want to introduce you guys to Chanel Davis. I'll just read a little bio. She doesn't even know I wrote this bio for her, so I made it fun. We'll see if we can make her blush a little. But Chanel's somebody who can wrangle a chaotic product development project just as easily as she wrangles a rodeo weekend. She's one of our go-to product managers here at Product EVO, where she's led everything from developing custom first aid kits for Everready, who's selling to Costco, to sourcing false eyelashes in the beauty industry for WinkClick, which is one of the fastest growing companies in that space. She is one of the really bizarre people who actually studied supply chain management in school and got a degree in it. So she is officially qualified to run this training meeting for you guys today. And if that wasn't enough, she's also a photographer, has been known to jump a Jeep on purpose, all four wheels off the ground into a mud puddle, and never misses a good rodeo. So basically, she's the kind of person who brings structure to chaos and makes it look fun. So with that, Chanel, the event is yours. Why don't you go ahead and run us through what you've got?
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Definitely love the chaos, that's for sure. But I'm very excited to be teaching this to you guys today, so I'm just going to share my screen and we can start from there.
And one quick note while she's bringing that up. This is a small group. I love how intimate small groups can be. So if you have questions, if something isn't clear, or if Chanel covers something that triggers an idea, or you want some feedback on it, we're small enough, just take yourself off of mute, interrupt, or me and Paul will be keeping an eye on the comments. So drop something in the comments, but I'd love for this to be interactive, and we're small enough we can be, so let's take advantage of that. All right, Chanel.
Well, yeah, sorry about that. It's given me like a little bit of like a warning when I'm going to share my screen, so it's not allowing me to see what tab I have open. Listen. Let me see. Okay, it's going to make me reopen this really quick. Sorry about that.
When she said open up again, she meant the whole Zoom. I thought it was like a platform on her.
Zoom can sometimes do weird stuff.
Sorry about that. I just got a new computer, so it is on a completely different settings now. So I had to go in and redo that really quick. Okay.
There you go. Okay.
Okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Okay, so just the beginning of our presentation. So what we're going to be going over today is sourcing smart, how to protect your IP and control your quality from day one. So this is a lot about building that foundation to have a successful product so that you can be successful for years to come and really understand the process at a core so that as you continue to scale your business or you continue to optimize your product, you really understand where those key points are, and so you're able to continually do that in a seamless manner. All right. Okay, so the contents that we're going to be going over today is defining your product. Do your due diligence about your product vision. So that vision that you hold so near and dear to your heart and that you've worked so hard on, we want to make sure that you understand how to define it properly so that you can communicate it properly, not only to your customer, but as well as your suppliers as well. Something that I always like to say is to be clear is to be kind, and to be unclear is to be unkind. So while that's relevant in a lot of areas of life, definitely relevant in product development as well. Then we're going to be reviewing critical requirements. What about your product needs to be true to make it successful? So what are those key points about your product that make it stand out so that it can be successful as you move forward within your process of marketing and selling and redeveloping the product as it continues to grow with your feedback from your customers? And then we're going to be going into a case study. So one of the great ways that I like to learn is learning from others, and we can see what successes they've had and learn from that, as well as taking a step back and understanding maybe some areas that they could have defined a little bit better so that we can take that and define it with our product. And then, like Josh said, we'll be moving into some questions. We'll do a hot seat so that you're able to talk about potentially where you're at with product development, maybe another idea you have, so that we can work through those things together, and then maybe go into a little bit more questions about things that you wanted to learn more about that we covered, or questions in a completely different area, such as marketing or anything that way. All right, so planning essentials, this is where we'll start. So product ideation. So I want you to take a step back and think about that product that you have, and when maybe you were driving down the road, walking down the street, in the shower, and that idea came to your head for that product that you were like, this would solve that problem that I've been having that has been frustrating me. So just that light bulb moment, that excitement that you had, and then we're going to be moving into understanding how to properly define that, because we all have these great ideas in our mind, but sometimes communicating them can be a little bit challenging. So how do we define what is important about that product and what we really enjoy about it, and what we need to do to tell our suppliers how we want this to be developed, what those areas are that we want to translate to our customers, as well as learning how to protect ourselves when we're working with suppliers, because there are some roadblocks that can come up, such as IP, like we've brought up, that we don't want to have our product be copied because we hold it so near and dear to our heart. It's something very important to us. And then we'll move into alignment. So what does that alignment look like as we move into sourcing that supplier? We move into creating that clarity with customers, as well as within your internal team, of what alignment and that core that you have for your business, because having that core for your business is going to be something that's going to translate for years. So how do we create that foundation from the product idea to the alignment within your team, as well as that development process? So something that we're going to be going back to, and that I find very valuable as a checkpoint, not just as you're starting product development, but as well as every phase that you go through, we always are constantly looking for new ideas for growth. As somebody that's thinking of these great ideas and being an innovator, we always want to innovate our own product as well. So that's why it's great to understand what is your minimum viable product. So we have this product, we think of a great idea, but nobody wants to have features of it that are crappy, that nobody really values and sees. And then you have the product that you want to build. So you have this great idea, but there's going to be a side of it potentially that you're like, is this going to support what I want it to do? And then you're going to have your minimum viable. So what about this product on its minimum scale makes it viable for the customer to use to solve that core problem? What about it can I learn from my client or my customer as we move forward? So, I mean, that's where you're going to get the most education, is from your customers. They're going to tell you what about the product that you can change and you can optimize as you go through new rounds. But understanding what that main problem is, what the heartbeat of your product is so important. So what is the minimum things that your product can offer for you to be able to take it to market, so that you can learn from your customers to then continue to grow and optimize it, and use your innovative mind as a teammate along with your customers to grow with them and create that community with them. So when you're going through this process and you're having all these ideas, and maybe you're getting a little bit overwhelmed with this foundation that we're building, take a step back and go back to understanding, what is my minimal viable product? So now we're going to go back to product vision. Really take a first step. What is that product vision? What problem does it solve? Is this issue something that is just my issue, or is this something that is maybe on a broad scheme that a lot of different people are having? So what does this problem solve, and what makes it stand out? What is it different about it? Is it going to be something that potentially, per se, like Scrub Daddy? How many years have we had sponges around and we've been cleaning with them, but then Scrub Daddy came out, two-sided form of it, so that you can get those tough edges, but then you can also use the other end to clean it very seamlessly, as well as like the little smile that it has for the spoon. So that really made it stand out because, one, it's a smiley face, so obviously, you need something happy when you're doing dishes, because who likes to do dishes? And it also solves that problem of having those different types of substances that you need to scrub off, and having that ability to conform to potentially a spoon or a fork. So that made it stand out. And then we can move into, why would a customer choose this product? So sometimes this can be something as simple as that emotional appeal to it. Another example would potentially say Stanley. They had their mugs out for years, but then when they changed that approach to it, of targeting moms who, they're running around with their kids and they never get a sip of water, and so then they see these mugs that they're like, oh my goodness, I can have this along with me, it's cute, it matches the colors that I want, and they blew up. So sometimes it's a lot about aligning with your market. Who in the market do you want to make this product for? And this is also going to be a learning curve. You're going to learn once you've had this product out there, but ideally, who do you see using this product? Take a step back, envision how this could support somebody in their everyday life. This is just all about that product vision. What do you want to see for the person that you're trying to help solve this problem? And how can you make it stand out so that they can easily obtain this product? Now we're going to move into what those quality expectations are. So what does quality mean for your product? There's going to be different regulations for different types of products. So understanding quality is also going to be understanding what manufacturing are you going to be using, what types of materials do you want, what regulations come with those materials. There's going to be different regulations for potentially, say, silicone versus a textile such as cotton. So we want to understand, what does quality look like, not only for the contents of material that it is, but also as well as what type of manufacturing best reflects the type of quality that I want to have. And then we're going to move into understanding, what will your customer reject? Is there something about quality that this needs to be true for this client, for your customer to want to have this product? And then we're going to understand, what makes this feel premium. So when you get that product and when your client is looking at it, and what makes it feel special to them, premium, makes them feel like they've got something of value. And that's definitely something that we're going to discuss further, because premium does have different expectations for different types of people. But when you're thinking about quality, take a step back and understand, what does quality mean? Does that mean, having a sticker versus having a potential box for your packaging? What does quality look like for, per se, your ideal market, as well as taking a step back and understanding what quality looks like on the manufacturing end as well. Then something to think about is your sales channel impact. Are you going to go to direct to consumer, retail, distributors? Each three of these things all have a different type of packaging that goes along with it, as well as when you're moving into that marketing, you need to be thinking about, if I'm going to direct to consumer, it's going to be a different marketing approach, and that's going to cost me a different amount of money, per se what retail does, per se what distributors do. So when we take a step back, where is your foundation going to start? Because saying you're going to direct to consumer doesn't mean that you're not going to go to retail or potentially like wholesale distributors, but where does your foundation want to start? Where do you feel the most confident that you can impact the most, as well as understanding what the cost of that's going to be? So building that foundation and understanding where those starting points and how they're going to seamlessly come together. Budget realities. We all have different budget realities for different products. Certain products are going to be much more expensive to obtain and develop versus other products. So thinking about what landed cost are you targeting? What needs to be true when it comes financially for you to be able to scale this and create that reach that you need it to do? Because potentially when you're saying, I'm going to develop this and just throw a number out there, it's not necessarily realistic. So taking a step back and understanding that, different types of quality is going to reflect on your budget realities, potentially the country that you're sourcing from. Now that tariffs have become a lot more prevalent, we need to be thinking about what budget you have there. What costs are you targeting when it comes to development of your packaging? Sometimes packaging is even more expensive than the product itself for some other products that we're going to be going over. And then, does it match your customization and volume?
Hey,
So,
Chanel, can I just chime in really quick on the budget?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I really want to emphasize is, we've quoted, I don't even know, thousands of products. I would say 9 out of 10 times, the initial quotes that come back are nowhere near what the customer hoped for. And that's okay. That's part of the process. Very common for people to over-engineer their products, because it's fun to be like, and it could do this, and it could do this, and it would make it out of these materials, and they just get so excited about everything it could be, and then they get it quoted, and they're like, oh crap, I designed a Ferrari when I was actually trying to make a Toyota Camry. It's pretty common, but that when you look at the quoting as part of the development process and not the end of the development process, then it's just a data point where you can say, okay, that's the reality of what I built. So I can do one of two things. I can either bring this super, super premium product to market at a higher price point, or if that price point, that retail price point is really critical, and I need to rethink some of these features. And I know Chanel already covered a couple points on features, but there's must-have features, and there's features that nobody cares about. They're agnostic. They don't actually move the needle one way or another for people. And then there's differentiating features. So differentiators are the ones that customers didn't even know they want, but they're really excited to get. The must-have are the features like wheels on a car. People just expect it. If you don't have wheels on a car, they're pissed. So you got to get those right. You got to get the differentiators right. But a lot of features customers don't actually care that much about. And so your job, one of the best ways to reduce costs is figure out what they don't care about, what's not moving the needle, eliminate those to get your price down a little bit more competitive. Anyway, Chanel, take it over. Just wanted to chime in on that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Just going off of what Josh said as well, once you have that core set in, what is the cost to obtain your customer? That's definitely something that is going to be added in when you have those budget realities, and something that per se you may not be thinking about because you're so focused on the development of the product, you're forgetting the other side of actually getting the product to the client. So adding that in too, as well as what Josh said. And then timeline constraints. What is your timeline? What do you want to have as an end date? And something to think about with product development is there's always going to be something to learn, and that's how I would like to say it, rather than to potentially saying there's always going to be a setback, because as we're doing development, we're going to be learning a lot. There's going to be things that we didn't think were going to be a challenge that may present themselves as their challenge. So don't get discouraged when that timeline happens and it's going to be adjusted. It's part of the product development process. It's part of that learning, and it's part of that growing, and it can potentially make your product a better product than what it was previously. So when you're thinking about your timeline, thinking about, I need to have this for a trade show, do you have a fixed launch date? What is the seasonality of your product? I mean, you wouldn't want to be launching a Christmas product in May, potentially, because it doesn't align with what the customer's looking for as of right now. So understanding when your product goes to market, what does that timeline look like for you, and then taking a step back and understanding the realities of what that timeline is going to be and the complex parts of your product. Well, some products may be a little bit easier to source. Other products are going to have more engineering to them, so they're going to take longer to develop. And while that's not a setback, like I said, you just learn more and take it as a benefit rather than something that's discouraging when you're going through those timelines. But it's very important to understand when you do want this product to go to market, why when you want this product to go to market, when is the best time for it, say, like I said, with seasonality, but understanding that there's going to be changes, there's going to be buffers, there's going to be things that are going to happen with the timelines. And then once you're kind of have a little bit more of this foundation set, there's going to be IP sharing. So when you have initial contact with a supplier or manufacturer, you're going to want to give a little bit about your product potentially, but you don't want to give too much, because when you give too much, there's issues that could come of copying. Example of this is Trader Grills. If you guys know who Trader Grills is, they almost lost their business because they had their manufacturer actually create another product that was very similar to theirs but lower quality and selling it to the market. So you want to make sure that when you're working with your supplier that you build that communication, you build that trust with them, but also that you trust wisely and you build that relationship with the more information that you're giving them about your product. You want to only share more as the commitment grows, and then having those contracts in place and understanding, taking a step back of going, okay, what transparency do I have? Are my molds exclusive to me? Are what's exclusive to me, and what could they take and copy? So having that clarity and transparency, as well as when you place that PO to have those correct contract in alignment, is very, very important. So just with the first steps when you're moving into working with a supplier, be very cautious about overloading them with all the information that you could give them, because it may come back to hurt you in the long run, because they could see that your product's doing very well and recreate it. China in particular is somebody that's very keen on doing this. They can take a product and recreate it just like that and manipulate a few different things to make it less expensive. So making sure that you have a good supplier is very important, but also making sure that you're leading with intention and being cautious about what you're giving them and what information, rather than just going in and saying, here's the steak and potatoes, and giving them all the information that you can, and then getting those repercussions later on down the road. So IP sharing, this is something that if you guys have questions about, let's dive into it a little bit more, but having that intention when you're going through and understanding what your plan is of, this is how much I want to share here. Okay, now we're moving forward to having that conversation with them, having that video chat with them, understanding what their capabilities are. Can they even produce the product that I'm wanting to? Okay, let's maybe order a sample of something so that they can show me what their capabilities are. Thinking about what those steps, what those key points are as we move forward.
I'm going to just chime in real quick on that. So a couple things we've learned is factories, if you've quoted anything, factories want a sample as soon as they can get their hands on it. And they'll kind of insist on getting it. You don't have to send them one. Like Chanel says, we like getting a counter sample from them first. Like, give us something that's similar, that's on your shelf that you produced before. We'll take a look. But they're beyond capable of giving you quotes. I mean, I just got a quote. This is true in China, not as true in other countries, but I just got a quote off of a photo and a really detailed product description and material specs, because I wanted to not send over CAD drawings any earlier than I needed to. And so we'll even do phased quoting, where we'll really have to convince the manufacturer that we understand how quoting works, that we don't expect this initial quote off the pictures to be perfect. We're just looking for an estimate, and that we even tell them we'll eventually send them a sample and they can give us a final quote then. That way we phase it and we kind of zero in on what the pricing is going to be before we start shipping samples to anybody. So that's part of it. The other thing too is we find that most people who get burned by suppliers in China have sourced their factory on Alibaba. Part of the built-in nature of sourcing a factory on Alibaba is they have an English speaker and they have a marketing division, because their marketing division is posting the Alibaba listing and communicating with people via English. And that means they also have the capabilities to set up an Amazon page just as easily as they can set up an Alibaba page. And so when you can find suppliers through other means besides Alibaba either through like a professional sourcing agent, or if you yourself wanted to go to the Canton Fair or something like that, there's ways you can find people that don't have those built-in marketing departments who really truly just want to be manufacturers. So if you can find those people, you're preventing a lot of potential headaches. And then, like Chanel said, you still want to do staged IP sharing. You still want the contracts in place. But one positive thing we're seeing is the Chinese government is enforcing IP contracts with foreign entities better than they ever have. We've encountered a handful of companies, US-based companies, who have actually won litigation in China for IP. And so because the Chinese government's enforcing that more, we're seeing more respect than we've ever seen for people that have exclusivity with suppliers. Sometimes we can't get in with the same supplier because they're producing something too similar. Frustrating, but I love it. I love that the suppliers are protecting that. So they're being more mindful. Not perfect, still be cautious, but I am seeing like positive movement in that direction over there. That's all.
All right.
Great.
So some of these highlight mistakes that
Scott, did you have a question?
Oh no, I just think that was great. Yeah, it's encouraging to hear that China's, taking that approach in a better way. So
Yeah, it's about time.
yeah.
All right. Well, moving forward, so I'm going to highlight some of the key mistakes that we can make. Thank you, Josh, for sharing a little bit more about that early IP. That's definitely something that I want to highlight here. And something that we discussed a little bit more is those overly optimistic timelines. When we try to rush through product development, we miss those key points when it comes to quality, where those increased costs could potentially be. You want to make sure that you have a good relationship with your suppliers and creating that team unity when it comes with your internal team and creating good expectations with your customers as well. So really understanding your timelines and being overly optimistic can be detrimental. So you really want to take a step back, understand what those timelines are, and we'll go over a little bit more what the solutions are for these as well. Skipping post-launch support planning. You want to understand what your market is going to look like once you actually have this product in hand. What does your marketing plan look like? Who are you exactly going to be selling to? Really thinking about, you have this great, wonderful product, but what are those next steps? So understanding what that long-term vision is going to be something that you're wanting to be highlighting. And then along with the sharing IP information, just something that we just discussed, but you want to make sure that you're not going to give too much information. Very exciting to hear about China, though, that they're helping us out with that. But yes, being very cautious still moving forward so that we don't run into issues down the road. And then moving more into some more mistakes that way, over or underestimating your total landed cost. We all want to be as cost effective as possible, but with the volatility with tariffs, that's something that we're going to be thinking about. Freight, what does your packaging look like? What does the fulfillment look like? So underestimating that can be very challenging. So we want to be thinking about things at a bird's eye view rather than super close in just one area. So understanding how each of those key points are going to impact that cost as we move down the supply chain pathway. Over customizing too early. So this goes back to that MVP of understanding what about your product needs to be true for it to be successful. We don't want to invest in custom molds too early. That can be very expensive. What is the best packaging to be going forward with? Because sometimes we don't want to spend too much money on packaging when, per se, another area of it would be more effective for the market that you're trying to work with. Ambiguous quality standards. Everybody has a different idea of what premium and high quality feels like. So really understanding what that looks like for your market and understanding what factories can produce that, as well as what your market is really, what, like Josh said, you need wheels for your vehicle. That's something that they expect. So we don't want to hone in too much on what that quality looks like and being too stringent on when it comes to those certain aspects. We want to understand what is the most effective and then move forward with that, as well as miscompliance or certification needs. Understanding what types of certifications you're going to be needing to sell in the United States is very important. For example, we need a made in China label on our boxes, on our product, to make sure that when we sell it in the United States that we can actually sell it, because if we don't have that on there, then we're going to be running into issues and you're going to have a product that you can't sell. So understanding what compliance means when it comes to your certification needs is super important, such as like per se FDA's food, but other different types. There's products when it comes to having a product go to children. You need to understand what certifications align with that, as well as cosmetics or medical devices. They all have those different certifications. So understanding what certifications support your product is very important, and what information that you're going to need to provide is going to be along with that foundation when you're working with those suppliers to ensure that they can reflect that. Some of these solutions moving forward, so these highlight mistakes. So when you're working backwards from your timeline of understanding, this is when I want my product to go to market, adding in a couple of weeks as you're moving backward with that development process to create buffers is going to be extremely beneficial. Understanding that those little hiccups, those learning moments are going to happen. So planning for them is far better than just trying to get your product to market as fast as possible, because you're going to miss things. So adding into that timeline is crucial.
I'd even take that a step further, Chanel. Like my default's 30%. So if you're expecting it to take a year, add 30% to that. So plan on like 15 months or so. If you're expecting 6 months, add another 2. It's just, it seems, especially on development, there's always a curveball. So yeah, 30%.
Right. And then skipping post-launch support planning, who can support you when it comes to marketing, understanding the ownership of who on your team is going to be overseeing certain areas and keeping them in line with those areas so that you guys can weave together seamlessly and create that product launch, and understand how can we best get the support to get this product out there. So thinking about not only the importance of the development side, but after that development side, actually getting it out there to your customers so that they can solve those problems that you are wanting them to solve. And then, like we discussed, sharing that IP information too early, creating that plan of what can I give them so that they can quote me properly, as well as what do I need to get from them to be able to analyze their capabilities before you give them all the information that you're going to be wanting to give to your actual supplier. And then underestimated total landed costs. Build in a buffer there, a minimum of 10%, because there's going to be changes when it comes to freight. There's going to become potentially to tariffs as we move forward with that. Delays, customs, there could be changes when it comes to the type of material that you're going to be using with your product. So understanding that there's going to be changes there and adding in a buffer is just going to make those learning experience seem a little less harsh when they do come. Over customizing too early, always go back to that MVP. Create that as something that's going to be a core for you, that you're going to check back. When you feel overwhelmed and feel frustrated maybe with the product development process, go back to that MVP and look at it and say, okay, is this really what I'm aligning with, or am I getting too into the weeds of it and I'm losing the focus on what it actually is for my customer? And then the ambiguous quality standards. Understand with your product what needs to be true, and create a QC checklist, so a quality checklist, so that when you do go to production, you understand what about this product is the most important, as well as what are minor defects, what are minor things that aren't going to really affect the client's experience, but are things that you want to keep an eye on as well, along with those extreme things that if they were to go wrong, then you don't want to accept this shipment. So having that pass fail is going to be something that we're going to talk a little bit more about.
Sorry. One note on QC checklists. When we get hired to help people fix their quality or supply chain issues, I'd say 99 times out of 100, there's no QC checklist. They've just relied on the factory's internal QC to give them what they want. And that creates a few problems. First, if there's ambiguous quality, the pricing tends to be a little higher than it could be, because factories often will assume the highest quality, even if they don't meet it, they'll build that buffer in for them because they also don't know how they're going to be held accountable at what you're going to reject. So they build higher pricing in. The more objective and clear you are upfront about the quality control, the more they can kind of fine tune their unit price and sharpen that up because they know exactly what they're going to be held accountable to. But that accountability for factories, we probably get as many references and referrals from factories as we do from clients. Factories really love working with us. They genuinely appreciate the transparency we bring with these QC checklists about what we're looking for, how we're going to measure it, what we'll accept and what we'll reject before they even start production, because then they can build their internal QC to match that. They don't want rejected products. So just having that checklist will prevent so many headaches. But then as products come out the other side, when you're testing them and you reject them, you're rejecting them on solid grounds because the factory bought into it just as well as you did. And so you can get those corrective actions done a lot quicker with factories. So just it's one of those little tools that we see missing almost all the time, but makes one of the biggest impacts.
Thanks, Josh. And then just to add back onto that, miscompliance or certification needs, this is something that we can add on to there to make sure that they're meeting the standards so that they can match those certification needs that you know that you need. So understanding what you need and then reflecting that when it comes to QC is going to be something that's very, very helpful for you as you move forward. This is something that I like to go back to. I love SMART goals because I think that they're really easy to remember and can be something that can be a grounding point. So writing this out and just having it in front of you as you continue to move forward with the product development process is something that's just a quick look at can be really, really reassuring. So specific, having those clear, defining your product, what your vision is, what are the non-negotiables about your product, being able to measure what the quality is, what your cost targets are, achievable, what about this product not only needs to be true with customizations, but your budgets, your MOQ, and your lead time. So detailing those things out so that it feels achievable, you can see it, you know what your goal is when it comes to that. And then relevant. Is this relevant with the problem that I'm trying to solve? And time bound. So build those backwards timelines with buffers with sampling, compliance, freight. Just having these SMART goals just very, very consolidated in front of you. Sometimes going back to and being like, okay, this is what my vision is on a broad scale. Going back and seeing that SMART goals is really, really helpful and beneficial when you're moving through the product development process and you're hitting those learning moments and you're going through that timeline. And then product requirements documents. This is actually going to be something that we will send to you after this meeting. So look for that in your inbox as well. But these are the key points that we're going to be going over in that, and so that you're going to be able to take that document and fill it in with your current product. So what your objectives, what your scope is, what about this is within the scope, what about this is outside of the scope, your user experience, thinking about what is going to be happening when they get that product, when they open that box, what does that look from start to end, your market analysis, who are we targeting with this, why are we trying to target this market with them, why is targeting this market going to be successful, and really honing in on that market analysis and making you take a step back and think about why you're reaching out to this market, where maybe those holes are going to be, and then features and requirements, understanding those certifications, understanding those key features, understanding what the most important parts of this product are and what are the supporting parts of this product so that it can be successful. Your timeline and milestones so that you're able to break this out and understand what timeline you're going to have, what milestones are you going to wanting to be hit, your budget, what your budget looks like for this product. Something that we talked about a little bit further back is understanding, your freight, understanding what your packaging looks like, then your risk mitigations. Thinking about maybe that plan B. What risk are you willing to take? What are you taking on currently? And how are you going to solve those if they do arise? Thinking about all those different ends outside of the box, inside of the box. What risks are you taking on? and how are you going to mitigate those moving forward? And then approval and sign off, you know, who are your stakeholders, what do you need to be thinking about when you have all of this outlined? What will they approve? What do you need to approve for this? What about all of this process needs to be true for it to be signed off so that you could potentially, you know, send this to get quoted on so that your supplier understands what those requirements are when it comes to your user experience, what the scope is, what your feature requirements. It's just going to be kind of something that you can go back to, look at, help you understand your product, as well as something that you continually pull from. So we'll be sending that as well. And then this is a case study that I wanted to go over. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Let's pause on that. Do you have an example of a PRD you could bring up?
I can, yeah. As soon as this is, I couldn't add it onto here necessarily just because it would make the wording too small. But as soon as we're done here, I'll pull it up and we can talk about that after we go through questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I do want to pull that up for everybody. So I want to kind of emphasize this document as well. This is probably one of the first documents you should create once you get the idea of your product, or like, you know, you have your eureka moment. Going through product development, you're going to hit obstacles. You're going to find things that challenge. You're going to have to make these trade-off decisions. And without some kind of foundational document to go back to and remember why you made some of those decisions, what can happen is you can make decision after decision after decision and find yourself 10 steps away from what you originally decided to create. Not always the worst thing, but you need to understand why you're making those decisions and that there is a trade-off. And, you know, going back to like, what is the core problem that we're trying to solve? And what are those required features and requirements? Like, you can sacrifice some nice to haves, but those core features that differentiate you and the must-have features cannot be compromised. And you might be thinking, well, I'm a team of one. Why does this matter? Well, one, it's good to remind ourselves what we're doing and why we're doing it, as we're forced to make those trade-off decisions. But you're not a team of one because you're working with the factory. They've got their own team. You're working probably with a marketing company. If you don't have one in-house, you're working with some type of agency. They need to understand what you're building, who you're building it for, why. You're going to be working with probably a third-party QC company. They need to understand what you're building and why. And it's one thing to have like the quality control document that's like this checklist, but if a factory can understand like the why and the what and the bigger context around what you're building, what a lot of us I think take for granted is that the moment you move overseas, or even to Mexico, for crying out loud, the moment you start making something in Mexico, and I'll even push this further, the moment you send your idea even to a colleague in the United States, there's so much that we assume people understand in our thinking. The moment that gets away from us, they don't always understand it the same way. And so this document to really refine and tighten it up so that whoever you send it to has broader context to understand what you're trying to communicate. As they're having to fill in gaps and make judgment calls on your behalf, they'll make better judgment calls. But yeah, especially true once you get outside the United States, a lot of times, like in Vietnam, they don't even have the products. Like, they don't exist in the market there that we're trying to build. So they don't even have a reference point of what this should be like. It's as foreign as an alien object to them sometimes. And so you do have to paint that context so that they understand when they're making judgment calls in the development for you, that they can do good, you know, make smarter calls and not waste around a prototyping because they had no freaking idea what your widget was for.
Thank you, Josh. And then we can just go a little bit over a case study. I want this to be a little bit of an interactive experience as well. So I'm just going to go over what this product potentially is, kind of what their process was. So a startup brand set out to launch a luxury weighted blanket designed to help with anxiety and sleep. It was marketed as cooling, calming, and consciously sourced with plant-dyed linen and ceramic beads instead of plastic. They spent time understanding their target market and creating a market strategy. Sounds like a great idea. Weighted blanket, it's cooling, it's calming, it's meant for anxiety and sleep. Great idea, and they really understand that they know who their target market is and creating that marketing strategy. So they're going to move into their design and samples. They sourced samples from 3 suppliers. The final design used a linen outer shell and ceramic microbeads. It looked great, but they skipped user testing on comfort and edge durability. So looked wonderful. They had a great product, but they did skip a couple of steps there, so that's something to know. Factory sourcing and cost. They chose a supplier with the lowest quote to keep costs down and margins high. They did one golden sample approval, but they never did an on-site visit, and they had no QC process and no formally written anything that they agreed upon. So it created a lot of haze when it came between the two of them. The standards weren't matching between maybe what the supplier was thinking was acceptable versus what this company was thinking was acceptable. Then they moved it to market. They tried to scale by pitching to boutique retailers, but one retailer received 10 customer complaints and within the first 30 days returned the entire order. The retailer was frustrated with the lack of clarity, inconsistent sizing, and there was no batch control. So I would challenge you guys. I just want you to take a second and think, what did they do right with this? And if you have a thought, just go ahead and speak up.
I mean, I think they had a good idea, that solved a problem. I think that was the initial thing, that they felt like they had something that, could solve people's anxiety by having this sort of newer type of blanket. So I think out of the gate, that was probably, a good thing to start to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. They had a great product, and thank you, Scott. I appreciate you sharing. Great product idea, something that they wanted to solve a problem for somebody with that anxiety, and it's cooling. Great product idea, but I mean, when now we were thinking a little bit more about maybe where they went wrong. So just the same type of thing, thinking about where they went wrong. I have a couple of notes in there too, that if you want to bring one of them up and discuss it just a little bit further, feel free. But maybe where did they go wrong? What's something that they could have done better?
I think that they probably could have done settled with a company or looked at a company that had the testing done, the third-party testing, because of some of the situations that happened with the phrase beginning after the 3 months and the beads settling into the corners. Had they had that done, they would have known some of this and made probably a different decision on who they went with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And this could be a situation as well as you kind of get what you pay for. I mean, when a company has a little bit lower of a cost, what risk are you willing to take on with that? Do they have those certifications done? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing.
Sure.
So absolutely, looking into maybe they didn't have that quality set up. If they had that QC that we talked about previously, that the weight needed to be the same on each blanket. Something that we saw differently, or something that we saw as an error, was some of the blankets were 20% heavier than they were labeled. So they had the issue that clients weren't getting the same things. If they had a repeat client, potentially they're getting a blanket that's heavier than what they anticipated. So having that is going to be very beneficial moving forward. And having the word of mouth is going to tank as well now that they've had this out to market. So I'm just going to move a little bit into what some of the changes that they could have had for success were. So like you said, conduct material performance testing pre-production. That's something that they should have thought about with their suppliers, so that they had more knowledge from their supplier, where the foundation of that comes from the clarity of understanding what they need to be for their product to be successful. And then building that QC with the pass-fail criteria, they could have understood that this is what needs to be true about this product for it to be successful versus what it could be so that it would be failed, and that they understand that, oh, maybe this isn't going to work with this supplier, or understanding that this is the level of standards that the supplier is going to be held to, and create more clarity with them. So there's not that hazy communication, especially when we're working with overseas manufacturers. There can be a communication barrier there as well. So creating that clarity with those QC checklists is something that's going to be very important. Confirm regulatory requirements for textiles, and confirming understanding what matches your MVP. So where they had ethically sourced products, does that align with what the manufacturer is actually presenting? What about their product when it comes to those beads needs to be true? And can that manufacturer reflect that? Those were things that they potentially were just saying that they wanted, but weren't doing that testing, weren't showing those requirements to show that that was true, and that's where they fell short with some of their quality standards as well. And then something that we talked about a little bit previously with the number 2, the QC checklist, was doing that pre-shipment inspection, having a third-party QC go in there and actually perform that audit to ensure that you are getting what you expect is going to be very helpful, so that you do have that pass-fail criteria and you can reject that. But prior to that, the factory knows what standard they're going to be held to, so you can keep that relationship with them. So they're not losing money, you're not losing money. They know what standard they're held to. You have a third party go in there, check it, and they know exactly, okay, this is where we fell short. This is maybe what we need to improve on. Can we accept this for our client? Because it's going to be something, I mean, if you received a weighted blanket and all of the beads go to the sides, it's like Josh said, receiving a car with maybe a tire that's one tire's bald, and it's going to cause issues for the rest of them. So understanding what needs to be true for the client as well goes along with that foundation that we've talked about through the duration of the meeting. Any questions here? Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm going to shift us a little bit. We've got 3 minutes left officially, and we will stay on for a little bit longer. But let's go ahead and pull down the presentation.
Okay, no problem.
And thank you, Chanel, for going through that. We're going to jump into hot seat questions right now with the time we have left. And again, we went a little long, so we'll stay later if you guys want us to. But I want to really turn this to you and make this as beneficial for you guys as absolutely possible. I think we charge $300 an hour for my consulting time. I'm here for you. So if you have any questions specific to your product, I'm all ears. Chanel's all ears. We'd love to give you some answers.
Oh, yeah.
I have one question, Josh. I just want to bring up, we talked about IP and control.
Yeah.
Why don't I just go get a patented real quick?
There's a few reasons. One is timing of the patent. So, I think it's a really, really good idea to get a provisional patent, but you want to delay that provisional patent until the last possible moment when you post anything about your product online. And that's before the product's live. I like to start posting things online during the product market fit evaluation phase when you're doing some testing and maybe some test ads and getting feedback. The moment you so much as put a tweet on Twitter, you lose the opportunity for provisional patent. And so delay as long as you can, time it, then put that provisional patent in place because it's only good for a year. And I really like doing the provisionals first because they're really inexpensive. They're fast. They give you the same protection, but they kind of give you a year to really validate product market fit, sell through everything else before you decide to invest in a very expensive patent. That's part one. The second part is the claims of the patent are really important. That's ultimately the protection a patent gives you. And during product development, here's a mistake we see a lot of people make. They'll get the patent before they even start development, and then they're forced to develop around those claims, even if that's not what the market wants. But if you flip the script and you develop the product first, you do have to be mindful of other people's patents, but then you can go out and have a really good patent attorney help you protect what was actually built and wanted, rather than designing around claims before you can validate that those are the claims that matter. So there you go.
Nice, yeah.
I've got a question too.
Yeah.
When would you say would be considered the right time to look at getting a mold? Like right now with my invention, I'm patent pending, and I'm applying a lot of what you're talking about already. But where I'm at financially, one thing I wanted to mention too along those lines is first I was looking into American made just to see how I would would come out in the long run versus sourcing from out of the country. And what I found out is even with these companies online, manufacturers for molds, it said, in the USA, but here I come to find out down the road that they have a China manufacturer for their molds, and they sent my drawing, although it didn't show everything, didn't say what it was, and if you don't know what it is, it was a little confusing. You just look at it and go, to get quotes for their molds, which was quite surprising that wasn't revealed to me or asked if I was okay with that, considering their whole website was made in the USA. But looking to start out where I'm at financially with my mold, going back to my question, when would be a good time to look at that. Like I'm pre-pricing them now so I can hopefully smoothly move into that phase. But is it a matter of the numbers of what I'm actually producing and how much more I could produce with the mold versus through my manufacturer that's making them as so?
Yeah. So I'm going to tackle a few of those things that you brought up.
Okay, thank you.
So the idea of a U.S. plastic injection mold manufacturer making their molds overseas is one of the dirty secrets in U.S. manufacturing.
Yeah.
They all do it. In fact, we get hired by a lot of the U.S. companies to help them build their molds overseas. And then they'll literally triple the price of the molds and
Yeah.
sell them to you. Like it's absurd. It is 3 times the cost on average what they
That's
charge
what I've
you.
heard.
Molds are already expensive, so yeah, if they're going to make them overseas anyway, you just as well build your molds yourself overseas. Even if
Right.
you're going to import them into the States, give them to the
Okay.
supplier and then have them set it up. So it'll save you a
Okay.
ton of money. Okay, so then you asked on timing of the molds. Let me ask you a couple questions that
Sure.
shouldn't give away your IP. But what is the stage of your product? It sounds like you're pre-production. You're somewhere in the development phase.
I am. I have my prototype done. Obviously, I have all my accessories, and I'm just doing a short run for R&D purposes of like 100 to go
Cool.
out.
With
And
3D prints.
I'm sorry.
Are you using 3D prints?
No. I actually found a manufacturer that can order my material, and it's the way they have to adjust it to make it, but it's hand done. It's not like through a mold. So
Okay,
naturally, my price per unit is going to be more than what it would be for if I was doing it with a mold.
for sure.
And that was a question I had because one place I went to and I toured their facility, a really great place. They had showed me everything, and they also said, of course, we have to send this out for a quote for your mold. And they were, at least they were upfront about it. But the other place that did this without my knowing that it was going to China, they came back with the price. They didn't have any questions for me, like how many are you planning on doing in a month and a year. The other place was very thorough. They had like a 3-page questionnaire. So I'm assuming that there's different styles of molds, ones that are made for this many, some are made for, 100,000 a year, several million a year, things like that is what I'm thinking is how this is unraveling. But I'm pretty much ready to go in the sense that I'm just doing my product box right now. Again, it was the legalities of going through. It's a class 1 medical device, so there's certain warnings. And that was another question down the road I had about, with the FDA to be listed and forget the other word, listed and something else. It's like $7,500 a year. But
Yep.
there's manufacturing places, assembly places I can go to that they already have their listed in registration, so I can kind of, what I'm understanding, go in under them like I'm paying rent. It's not 7,500; it's a portion of what their $7,500 bill is, and I would still be the distributor owner of it. They would be considered the FDA, compliance part of it. So I'm pretty ready. I would say within the next 30 days, and it's so true about adding that time on. I thought this was going to be months and months ago, and with everything I've learned and the hiccups as you've expressed, I wish I would have watched this, 6 months ago. It would have been terribly beneficial to me, even more so then. It is now as well with everything you're saying, but it's a question of, geez, is it just matter of the numbers and your demand versus, the quantity you're able to pump out per quarter or whatever.
Yeah, so big picture, big picture. There's different phases a product can go through on a manufacturing level to drive the price down and the volume up. So if it's a plastic product, I assume it is because we're talking about injection molds, you can do either 3D prints or like a CNC plastic part, which CNC plastic tends to be a little bit closer to real life performance. And it may be enough for what you're doing. They're going to cost a lot, but they can be very functional. And if you're in that pre-product market fit phase, they're great. So if you're doing runs of 10s to 100, you might not be profitable on a per unit basis on those, but what you can do is you can prove product market fit, which my core philosophy is you do not have product market fit until people actually take out their wallets and hand you money. No matter what any survey says or feedback or anything, like until somebody gives you money, you don't have product market fit.
Okay.
And so I'm okay losing money on the first units because I'm still reducing my risk and my capital outlay on big, expensive injection molds. But once I get proof of concept and proof of product market fit, I'm willing to take it to the next step.
Okay.
But there are different types of molds. So like the cheapest molds that work for some parts, not all parts, are like sandcast molds. They're a few $100. You can produce tens of units and bring your costs down.
Okay.
Then you can do aluminum molds. You can produce hundreds to a couple thousand units.
Okay.
They're about a quarter or a third of the cost of steel molds.
Okay.
They're not going to last a really long time, but then you can get your price way down compared to like CNC or anything else
Okay.
without a huge capital expense. And then the next one is once you get into steel or hardened steel molds where you can really push like that cycle up to 500,000, 2,000, or a million. They've got cold runner steel molds, and then they've got hot runner steel molds. Hot runner are the most expensive, lowest unit cost, but you really don't need those unless you're doing really high precision parts or like crazy high volumes.
Okay.
So for you, it's just a matter of the capital you have to work with and your risk tolerance. Whether you want to stay with the CNC for proof of concept or move to like maybe an aluminum mold for the proof of concept to bring that unit cost down.
And just to clarify, a lot depends on your material too.
Yeah.
Some materials may not be compatible with certain mold materials.
Okay.
So like if it's a silicon, you can do low pressure and it can be a low grade steel or even aluminum. If it's a engineered plastic, you may have to go to a high pressure steel, or a steel that can handle high pressures.
Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
One last note for you, Ann. Because you are doing a Class 1 medical device, one thing that will help you in your factory search, whether it's domestic or overseas, is look for factories that are ISO 13485 rated.
ISO 13485 rated?
13485.
485.
Those are factories that are basically FDA compliant, that have all the documentation and quality procedures that the FDA requires.
Okay.
And so they will do that whole back end for you, the compliance stuff. You yourself will still need to hold the 510K if it's a predicate device in your name, so that you can make the claims that you're going to make.
Interrupt you.
Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry about that. Are you meaning when they say that $7,500 fee for the year? Is that what you're saying, that I would still be the one to pay for that one, or?
So we're not FDA lawyers. We just have to deal with the back end of like making sure things are built to FDA compliance. So I don't know where the fee is paid because it's a little out of the scope of what we do, but I do know that you have to have the 510K in your name.
Okay.
And the factory on the compliance side needs to have the ISO 13485 to make sure they are FDA compliant for building your product.
Great. FDA compliant. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
And I would say, when you say find a factory that already has that, if you work with a factory that doesn't have it, sometimes they will charge you that fee for them to get that compliance. So if the factory already has it, you've at least waived you've saved some of that fee.
I see. Okay. Okay, I'll look for that.
What you don't want to be is the first client to go into a factory and they're going to go get certified because of you.
Right. All right.
That tells you they're not
curve.
Yeah, that's going to be a very expensive. That tells you already they're not experienced in what you need.
I see. So would that mean like the manufacturer that I'm having here locally do the main bulk of it? They should be the ones that have that ISO 13485?
Yes. Whoever's doing final assembly, super critical that they have that to be compliant.
Well, that was the thing. Like they would only do the main part and one part of the assembly. My other part that I was going to ask later, if I didn't want to take up too much of your time either, was with the fulfillment houses, and I'm learning about them, and every step is there's a fee for every step if they're putting something on it or they're packaging it, they're wrapping it, paper, everything. So I'm looking to see where I can reduce those costs with how I'm getting my accessories. But that being said, I've learned that's when I found out about some of these other fulfillment assembly places that do have the registration and the listing already with the FDA, rather than pay the $75 the first year. I mean, I believe I'm very passionate about what I'm doing. I believe it's going to be 100%, but whether it's my money or anybody's money, I'm very particular about spending that. I'd rather look for a solution to be 100% sure that that's worth spending before I do something like that.
For sure. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking for factories with that cert will help you, and then
Yeah, and they
I,
might.
I will I will kind of carve out some space for us where we're not patent or not FDA attorneys, and I'm not going to pretend to play one
Right.
and give
Oh,
you
no,
it. So
I'm
like
fine.
go
I
through
understand.
and just like double check on who needs to hold that $7,500 certificate. But anyway, hopefully that helps.
Thank you for all the information. I appreciate all of it. Thank you.
You bet. And I do want to acknowledge we had a whole bunch of people just jump on. I know the call reminder went out for 12 p.m. Central Time, which is 11 a.m. Mountain Time. So for those of you just jumping on, you're catching the tail end of us. But we will be hosting this call again next month on phase 2 of sourcing, and we'll keep Q&A open here at the end. So for all of you that just jumped on, you're welcome to ask a question of Paul or Chanel. I've got to jump off for another meeting, but they can stay on for another minute to field some questions for you guys.
Thanks.
Otherwise, it's been a pleasure to be with y'all.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank
We'll
you.
see ya.
Right. Any questions, Scott? And looks like we've got Dana and Sean. iPhone.
I don't know if they want to ask anything, but if not, I have a question, I guess.
Sure.
So I guess it's around IP and, dealing with foreign countries, especially China for manufacturing, and then maybe even distribution in foreign countries regarding IP. Getting, a provisional patent that we talked about, and then, finalizing a patent. I guess it's my understanding each country has kind of a patent process, and how protected are you in, working in different countries and then maybe potentially distributing in different countries? Does each country, should you get a patent? Do you recommend getting patents or some form of patents, IP protection in each country you're kind of working in or working with?
That's a good question. I believe there is a form of it. It's called an international patent. There's like some treaties that if you get this patent, it covers you in 58 of these countries, or China or the European Union and things. So your patent attorney will know that.
Okay, so work with him a little bit on that.
And one thing I do say too is remind people is a patent is as good as what you're willing to defend it.
No.
So.
Yeah, and for licensing potentially, I think.
Oh, absolutely. If you can license that, that's huge. Because then a bigger company takes it, they license it. The bigger company's got the resources, and if they got a license on it, they're gonna protect it tooth and nail.
Yeah, and that's maybe a good.
I'm not saying it's no. Don't do it. It is just be aware of the limitations of what you can do to defend a patent.
Yeah.
It all comes down to who's got the bigger pocketbook, or.
Nobody wants to get in those kind of fights, probably.
One thing we found, we have found some of our. Once you put your product out in the market, if it is doing well, if it's selling, it's going to be copied. They're going to do everything. They're going to come at different angles. They're going to come look at it this way, that way.
Sure.
We have found some of the product, like our clients will call us and say, "Hey, I found my product on Amazon, unless I'm not selling it, or Alibaba," and we go hunt it down. And what some companies do is they just fish. They'll go take pictures and images, and if they get an order, then they'll go hurry and try to tool up, or they'll make a fake, but they'll use your pictures.
Wow. Yeah.
It's if you got a good product, it is going to be copied. Or,
right.
Try to copy. They're going to try to make the best copy they can. And what's interesting, this is what's surprising, is it is so much easier to get a product if you have a patent. Even you and somebody's selling it on Alibaba, you can probably get that taken off Alibaba the same day. If it's on Amazon, you've got a fight ahead of you.
Wow.
Alibaba protects property IP much better than Amazon.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, I guess there's an Alibaba conference coming up in Las Vegas next month, early next month. Are those worth going to? I don't know. Just, I mean, it's sort of like a distribution thing where they sort of teach you about supply chain and all that.
It might be. Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I've never. I wouldn't be able to say yes or no. I mean, more information is always good.
Yeah. Okay.
One thing that's interesting that when Josh did bring up Alibaba, sourcing on Alibaba, the majority of the factories, and I use the air quotes, the majority of the factories you're dealing with, they're actually trading companies. You're not dealing with the actual factory.
Not the manufacturer.
So
Sure.
what can happen is you'll go through you'll say, yeah, we can do it. That trading company will go and they'll source the factory and they'll manufacture that. So it's very possible, like that blanket factory, if they went and sourced to a trading company, they could have got their samples from one factory, then another factory came and says, we'll make it even cheaper. For production, they go to another factory. And that's why you have a lot of times you see a lot of differences in production. Trading companies will shop things around.
I see.
There's nothing, and I wouldn't say trading companies are necessarily evil. You just need to know. You just want to know who you're working with. Are they legitimate? And you put those QC steps in place, because what those QC steps do, those QC requirements, it gives you, before you ship any product out of China, you want to have a third party go in there with your QC inspection and do spend a day inspecting your product, send you your report, and you don't if it doesn't pass your QC, you don't accept it, or you work on the mitigation. What are you going to do? You're going to fix this. You're going to give me concessions. I'm rejecting 1/3 of it. I'm not going to pay the balance, and on those.
How's the best way to get that third party? I'm not sure if it's called a registered agent that helps you find the right people. Like, say I wanted to have my mold done in China for a quote. Obviously, based off of what Josh had said earlier about how it's marked up here, which I assumed it was. How is the best way to find that third party that you can check their references and recommendations, that it's a quality person that isn't going to outwardly do you wrong from the get-go, that they're going to go and say, oh, I know this is the greatest mold factory here, but I'll get 3 comparisons based off of these 3 and their reputations. How do you find that reputable third party?
Yeah, again, I have to be careful because that's what we're in the business of doing, so I don't want to say, call us at, but it is, there are you do need to find a reputable sourcing agent. Now, there's a big wide range of sourcing agents. One is that we go out and hear some names and numbers, and there you go. There's others that go all the way to, like, we'll go vet it. We'll put it on the ground. When you're talking about a mold, especially an injection mold, it's not just, here's the file, go make the mold. There's for sure going to be probably 2 or more revisions. You're going to have to get feedback. You're gonna have to ship samples back and forth, or have boots on the ground that can go in there and inspect it and do that.
Right.
So it is, like I said, that's what we do.
Okay.
One thing, and we have boots on the ground in China. We have third party QC. When we say third party, they're not part of our company and they're not part of the factory. They get a QC document and they go in and they independently say, this is what's bad, this is what's good, and they give it to us and we look at it and the factory looks at it, and that's separate. We don't have our own QC because we need to be independent.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you need any help, we depending on we could get you a mold factory in a couple. We'll look at it. We work with a dozen different mold factories.
Okay. I guess I'll be following up with you guys afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. I want to be.
I understand.
This is a presentation, but that is exactly what we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet. Anything else?
Hi, Paul. I'm Sean Carroll. I'm on a motorcycle trip up in the Rocky Mountains, so I got in late and I didn't get to hear hardly any of this, but and you might have already covered it, and I know that you guys are tied into China. What's your thoughts on like Monterrey, Mexico, and working with them? My thought was because I've seen the quality fade that you're just talking about in China, and I was just thinking with them being on the other side of the border, I've heard pretty good things about Mexico, but I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, Mexico does a really good job. I need to be careful what I want to clarify if I gave the impression that China is bad quality. China's got the widest range of quality you can get.
Well,
They've got quality. They got people working out of garage, and they've also got the best quality in the world.
right. Well, I'm an acupuncturist and a Chinese herbalist, so I've seen what they've done with the herbs and the drugs and other things, and I'm not anti. I just my teacher, Dr. Huang, said there's a reason they have big sleeves over there because there might be something hidden up there. So,
yeah, you need to be careful. You need to vet your factories.
But I was also thinking because as we saw in the pandemic, where getting shipping over and getting things stuck in evergreen, shipping stuck in the canal, and so I just didn't know if Mexico, like this Anne Marie's talking about plastic injection molding, it's right across the border. I don't know how NAFTA, ties into all this, but I was just curious what your thoughts were on Mexico versus trying to do it all the way over in China.
Me too.
I'm just going to paint a broad brush for Mexico. Great country. It started out basically U.S. companies going in and establishing their own factories in there. So when they say Mexico's got tons of manufacturing, they do, but a lot of it is captured, meaning I can't go knock on this factory door because it's owned by GE, or I can't go knock on this because they only make for Bosch,
Okay.
And so then the other factories were built up around those.
Yes.
And so in China, I can go. I have a full product package, everything, and you can get the whole supply chain vertically integrated. You can get the whole product.
Okay.
In Mexico, you can do that. It's just going to take you a whole lot longer.
Okay. All right. And I know that, the labor and all that is different too. So.
Yeah. So typically, the general rule of thumb is you will pay more for Mexico, even with the tariffs. In fact, right now, Mexico is they're kind of, and we'll see. If you don't, what is it, like the weather and tariffs? You don't like the weather and the tariffs? Just wait till tomorrow, But Mexico has absolutely a great country, but you'll probably take 3 times longer to develop your product.
Okay.
And I will just say too, and Chanel will verify this. On average, what did they determine? It was 13 phone calls.
13 phone calls to get a response, and not a quote, just a response.
Oh my gosh.
It takes on average 13 contact. I think it was a quote. 8 to get a response, 13 to get the quote, or something like that. Wow. That's the average. Meaning, Mexico is built on relationships.
Yeah.
In China, you think of you send out quotes to 3 factories, and they'll say, "Can we give you samples tomorrow?"
Yeah.
In Mexico, you call and you call and you call and you call and you call, and you go down. You've been and once the relationship is established, they trust you. Then they'll quote it.
Okay. Well, thank you. That clears up a lot. I appreciate that insight. And
I don't want to steer you away from Mexico.
No,
There's strategic reasons, but it's definitely it's a longer haul and it's a little more difficult, more expensive.
Right. Mañana is what they always say. Tomorrow. So I'm not trying to be flippant. I just said there are neighbors. I just thought, hey, maybe. But now and you're right. There's a lot of it's closed to just a regular independent person going down there trying to get something.
Yeah, it's a very relationship based culture.
Mm-hmm.
and so you definitely will need a boots on the ground to kind of make the introductions and the, kind of
Right.
break bread a little bit.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Paul. And I'm sorry I'm late checking in. I had to drive down on my motorcycle to find connection to tie in with you guys. But I will definitely be getting a hold of you guys for a couple years. Josh has been sending stuff out, information, so I know you guys are top notch. And you're right there in St. George. I'm in Colorado, so I appreciate your time and effort.
You bet. Look forward to talking to you, Sean.
Thank you.
And Dana,
How's it going?
good. How are you?
Good. How do you guys find Indonesia and Vietnam in terms of sourcing at this point? Like, are you, I mean, the tariff situation, right? But like relative to China, what are you finding in terms of like suppliers and supply chain in those countries?
I guess, I think we just say first off, what you don't have to give your product, like what category are you talking about?
Yeah, injection molding, metal assemblies.
I found in Vietnam, I wouldn't say injection molding is something that is an expertise for them. We work with the team over there as well, and that's something that they've steered away from. They're much more textiles and furniture based.
Yeah.
While it's not completely out of the range of possibility, you're going to be running into a lot more quality issues and things. It's going to be harder in Vietnam substantially, say China.
They haven't. Yeah, going back. We have that report, and it is basic parts you can do in Vietnam. As soon as you need to get into engineering complexity, they're just not set up. Indonesia is probably even a step down from Vietnam too.
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting. Okay. I was just curious.
And Vietnam has, I think they've basically settled. I think their tariffs right now are 20%.
Yeah.
And
are the Chinese getting I heard from some suppliers that the Chinese are getting like basically a tax write-off or something internally for like absorbing some of the tariffs. Are you seeing that?
It can, yeah. Like they've been doing a lot of different things to reduce the impact of tariffs.
Yeah.
One of the things we have found is factories are more and more open to working directly with clients. So in the past, a lot of factories, they just want to manufacture, and they have, in fact, some factory, almost all have separate companies that are their sales arm.
Yeah.
Some factories don't even have that. They work strictly with trading companies. What they're finding more and more is they're cutting out the trading company because they know that's 5, 10, 15, 20% of their now. And so, we do a part of our process, based on the retainer is, direct factory pricing, full transparency. The government has been giving some tax rebates. There's different ways around it. One of the top ways that we've found is we do door-to-door shipping if you have a less than a container load.
Are you using the like whatever the loophole is? Does it get through that?
It's not really a loophole. It's just it's not transshipping. It's essentially brokers will consolidate smaller shipments into one container and then in multiple containers send them off.